Have you ever wondered what would happen to grocery store food shelves if a war between the United States and Iran escalates, disrupting oil, transportation, and global agriculture? In today's video, we will take a deeper look at 12 foods that could begin to shift. First, when the global food system comes under pressure. In the past few years, the price of some basic foods has risen from 20% to more than 60%. And as the cost of fertilizer, fuel, and transportation continues to fluctuate, some familiar products could be among the first items affected on supermarket shelves. What is notable is that these changes do not always unfold over many years. Sometimes, in just a few days, a familiar item can become noticeably more expensive, offer fewer choices, or quietly change on the shelf. And especially, the final item on today's list is something millions of families have bought before. But few people realize how fragile its supply chain really is. 12. Eggs. The last time egg prices surged in the United States, many people walked into grocery stores and saw a scene they had rarely imagined before. Egg shelves nearly empty. This actually happened. Just a few years ago, a dozen eggs in many grocery stores was often only around $2. But after outbreaks of avian influenza, tens of millions of chickens had to be culled to stop the spread of the disease. When the number of chickens dropped sharply, the supply of eggs in the market fell as well. Prices began climbing very quickly. At one point, the average price in the United States rose to more than $6 for a dozen eggs. In some areas, shoppers even had to pay nearly $10 just to buy a normal carton of eggs. In some stores, customers were even limited to buying only 1 or 2 cartons of eggs per shopping trip. What makes eggs one of the most volatile foods is that this market reacts very quickly to pressure within the food system. Eggs have a short production cycle. A chicken can lay eggs almost every day. But supply is extremely sensitive to feed and energy costs, and that is where larger forces begin to appear. If geopolitical tensions escalate and war in the Middle East drives global oil prices sharply higher, the impact will spread very quickly to the poultry industry. History shows that whenever conflicts in the Middle East push oil prices higher, food production costs also begin to rise. Chicken feed is mainly made from corn and soybeans. These crops depend heavily on fertilizer, fuel, and transportation. When oil prices rise, the cost of farming, transportation, and running farms also increases. If feed costs rise sharply, egg prices in supermarkets are often one of the first items to react. That is why many experts see eggs as an early warning signal of the food system. When eggs begin to fluctuate significantly, it often shows that pressure is spreading across the entire supply chain. And many Americans still remember very clearly the feeling of walking into a store and seeing the egg shelves almost empty. In the most recent price surge, in some places shoppers had to pay nearly $10 for a dozen eggs. So what about in your area? Please update the price of eggs where you live so everyone can know. But eggs are not the only protein under pressure. While egg prices fluctuate very quickly because of livestock feed costs, another familiar food in the American grocery basket is also quietly becoming more expensive. And this time, the story begins with cattle herds across the United States. 11. Beef. The cattle herd in the United States is currently at its lowest level in many decades. This is not just a number in an agricultural report. It is a data shock quietly spreading through the entire food market. And it is beginning to appear on supermarket shelves as beef prices rise faster than many other foods. According to recent reports from the United States Department of Agriculture, the total cattle herd in the United States has declined continuously since 2019. Part of the reason comes from prolonged droughts in important ranching regions such as Texas and across the Midwest. When pastures dry up and feed for livestock becomes scarce, many farmers are forced to sell part of their cattle earlier than expected. This has pushed the number of cattle in the United States down to levels the agricultural industry has not seen in many decades. When supply drops, prices begin to react very quickly. In 2025, beef prices in the United States rose by more than 16%, and many forecasts show that prices could continue to increase by about 5 to 9% in 2026. In many American families, beef has become one of the most expensive items in the grocery basket each week. One notable thing is that this shift is beginning to appear clearly in shopping behavior. Many supermarkets have reduced promotional programs for beef, and more consumers are switching to cheaper proteins such as chicken or pork. But weather is not the only factor putting pressure on this market. If geopolitical tensions escalate and war drives global energy prices higher, the cost of producing beef could rise sharply in a very short time. The cattle industry depends heavily on energy. Fuel is used to operate farms, transport livestock feed, and move cattle to processing facilities. Feed for cattle also depends on fertilizer prices and fuel in agriculture. After processing, beef must be stored and transported in a continuous cold chain system to ensure food safety. If fuel or livestock feed costs rise sharply, the entire beef supply chain becomes more expensive very quickly. And this is not a story about the distant future. It is happening right now, and it could directly affect the weekly meals of millions of families in the United States. When cattle numbers fall, production costs rise, and demand remains high. Beef prices are often one of the early signals showing pressure forming in the food market. This is making beef one of the most expensive protein sources in American supermarkets today. When you have gone grocery shopping recently, have you noticed beef prices increasing significantly compared to before? Examples like beef show that pressure in the food system can begin right at the farms. But with some other products, the story begins thousands of miles away, on international shipping routes. And one of the clearest examples is something millions of Americans drink every morning. 10. Coffee. Many Americans begin the day with a cup of coffee. But there is a fact that surprises many people. The United States can hardly grow coffee domestically. Most of the coffee consumed in the country has to be imported from tropical nations. That means every morning, a cup of coffee in America actually depends on shipping routes stretching thousands of miles across the ocean. According to data from the United States Department of Agriculture, more than 99% of the coffee consumed in the United States is imported. Coffee beans are typically transported by container ships from South America and Central America to major ports such as the Port of Los Angeles or the Port of New York and New Jersey, and only then continue to roasting facilities and supermarket systems across the country. And recently, consumers have begun to notice the change. Coffee prices in many American supermarkets have risen significantly. Some store chains and coffee shops have also started adjusting the prices of their drinks. Even in a few places, coffee packages on the shelves appear smaller than before, while familiar promotional programs show up less often. One viewer once commented under a video about food prices, "I cannot believe how fast coffee prices have increased. Every morning I still have to drink a cup, but now I am starting to pay more attention to the price than before." What makes the coffee market especially sensitive is its almost complete dependence on international shipping supply chains. If geopolitical tensions escalate and energy or container shipping routes are disrupted, global transportation costs can rise very quickly. Strategic areas such as the Strait of Hormuz are always considered critical choke points of global trade. When oil prices rise and container ships have to take longer routes, shipping times also become longer. And with coffee, if the shipping chain slows down by just a few weeks, roasters can begin to run short of raw beans. When that happens, coffee shelves in supermarkets can thin out faster than many people expect. That is why coffee is often seen as one of the items most likely to react when global supply chains come under pressure. When shipping slows, costs rise, and supply tightens, coffee prices are often one of the first signals to appear in the grocery baskets of American consumers. What about you? Have you noticed coffee prices at the supermarket or coffee shops near your home rising recently? Coffee shows just how fragile global shipping supply chains can be. But when it comes to a staple food for billions of people around the world, there is one item that is far more important. 9. Rice. Not long ago, a man in his early 60s in California shared a fairly simple story. He said that every time he goes to the supermarket, he always puts one extra bag of rice into his cart. Not because he is panicking or stockpiling excessively, simply because he lives with his wife and 2 young grandchildren in the house, and he knows that if there is one food that is always useful in the kitchen, it is rice. Stories like that are becoming more common. In many supermarkets across the United States, some retail workers say large bags of rice are selling faster than before. In a few places, discount promotions for rice are also appearing less often. Rice shelves are not exactly empty, but shoppers are starting to pay closer attention to the price and the bag size they choose. Behind these small changes are larger shifts in the global market. Recently, some major rice-producing countries have introduced export restrictions to protect domestic supply. When this happens, rice prices in international markets often react fairly quickly. One of the countries with the greatest influence on the global rice market is India. This country accounts for a very large share of the world's rice export supply. When export policies change, the impact often spreads across many different parts of the food supply chain. In addition, international transportation also plays an important role. Most rice is transported by sea across long shipping routes. If geopolitical tensions cause fuel costs to rise sharply or shipping routes to be disrupted, the cost of transporting each ton of rice can increase quickly. When global supply tightens and transportation costs rise, an item that has been considered stable for many years can begin to fluctuate. And when that happens, consumers usually notice it first through small changes on supermarket shelves. Interestingly, in many past food crises, rice has often been one of the foods families turn to first. Not because it is rare, but because it is simple, easy to store, and can become the foundation for many different meals. So when the rice market begins to show signs of fluctuation, many people pay attention immediately. Because they understand that if even a basic food like rice begins to face pressure, it may reflect larger changes within the food system. What about in your kitchen? When you go to the supermarket, do you usually choose a large bag of rice to use gradually, or only buy smaller bags week by week? 8. Olive oil. In the past few years, olive oil prices have risen so quickly that many shoppers have started to notice. If around 2020 to 2021, a 1-liter bottle of extra virgin olive oil in American supermarkets often cost about $10 to $12. In many places today, the common price has climbed to $18 to $22, and some premium brands are even higher. Most of the world's olive oil comes from the Mediterranean region, especially countries such as Spain, Italy, and Greece. When prolonged droughts or extreme weather occur in these areas, production can drop sharply, and the global market almost immediately reacts. But there is another factor many people overlook: energy. From harvesting, pressing the oil, to international shipping, the entire olive oil production chain depends on fuel costs. When energy prices rise or international shipping routes become more expensive, olive oil prices usually rise as well. And there is a rather surprising detail. In some supermarkets in Madrid, expensive bottles of olive oil have started to be placed in anti-theft boxes, similar to how stores protect expensive bottles of wine. This shows how quickly the price of this product has changed. Olive trees are also not a crop that can recover quickly. After a poor harvest, it can take many years for olive groves to return to normal production. So when supply falls, the market often takes quite a long time to stabilize again. It is not that olive oil disappears from supermarkets, but when a familiar kitchen product begins to become more expensive, it is often a sign that the global food market is changing. What about in your kitchen? When you have gone shopping recently, have you noticed the bottle of olive oil you usually buy becoming more expensive? Or have you not really felt that change yet? 7. Orange juice. For many decades, orange juice has been a familiar part of breakfast in the United States. But in the past few years, regular shoppers have started to notice a fairly clear change. Orange juice prices have risen, and sometimes the familiar bottles no longer appear as densely on the shelves as before. Much of the story begins in Florida. This state was once the largest orange producing center in the United States. Orange groves stretching across many counties supplied raw fruit for orange juice processing plants for many generations. But orange production in Florida has dropped sharply in recent years. Crop diseases, major hurricanes, and unstable weather have caused many groves to lose significant yields. When supply falls, orange juice companies are forced to find additional sources from elsewhere, especially Brazil, a nation that now accounts for a large share of the global export market for concentrated orange juice. Dependence on international supply makes orange juice sensitive to energy and transportation costs. Growing oranges requires fertilizer, agricultural machinery, and fuel for harvesting. After that, the juice must be transported, kept refrigerated, and bottled before reaching supermarkets. One viewer once shared that his family used to buy large bottles for breakfast every day. But recently he has started choosing smaller bottles, simply because the price has become quite different from before. These changes usually happen very slowly. There are no empty shelves or scenes of panic. Just a familiar breakfast product slowly becoming something shoppers pause for a few extra seconds to consider before putting it into their cart. 6. Sugar. Sugar is one of the most basic ingredients in the food industry. It appears in candy, soft drinks, sauces, packaged foods, and hundreds of other products in supermarkets. So when sugar prices in the global market change, the impact often spreads much wider than consumers realize. In the past few years, global sugar prices have increased significantly. Part of the reason comes from weather and agricultural production in major sugarcane growing countries. But there is another factor many people overlook: energy. In major sugarcane producing countries such as Brazil and India, sugarcane is not used only to make sugar. It is also an important raw material for producing ethanol, a biofuel used in gasoline. When oil prices rise sharply, part of the sugarcane supply can be diverted to ethanol production instead of sugar. That shift may sometimes be only a small portion of total production, but in the global market, it can significantly reduce the supply of sugar. In a small bakery in Houston, a 65-year-old owner said ingredient costs have changed quite a lot in the past few years. Sugar used to be one of his most stable ingredients, but now the price has gradually risen over time, along with flour and many other ingredients. He said the change did not happen overnight, just a little each year. But after a few years, the ingredient cost for a batch of baked goods has become quite different from before. Sugar seems like a very simple ingredient, but because it appears in thousands of food products, any shift in supply can spread across the entire global food system. 5. Cooking oils. For many years, cooking oil was one of the most stable items in supermarkets. Shoppers usually just picked a familiar bottle and moved on. But in the past few years, many people have started to notice that the cooking oil section has changed quite clearly. Prices have risen, some types appear less often, and the choices on the shelf are different from before. Part of the reason comes from global supply. Sunflower oil once accounted for a large share of the global cooking oil market, and much of that production came from the Black Sea region. Countries such as Ukraine and Russia supplied enormous amounts of sunflower oil to many nations. When supply from this region was disrupted, many food manufacturers had to switch to other oils such as soybean oil, canola oil, or palm oil. But replacement is not simple, because each type of oil has its own supply chain and production regions. When many markets look for alternatives at the same time, prices and supply are quickly affected. These changes are not very loud. Shelves are still full. But shoppers are beginning to notice that the familiar choices in their kitchens are slowly changing. 4. Canned tuna/seafood. Canned fish has long been one of the most convenient foods in supermarkets. A small can of tuna can be kept in the kitchen cabinet for a very long time, and in just a few minutes, it can become a simple meal. But in the past few years, many shoppers have started to notice that the price of some canned fish products has increased significantly. The global fishing industry depends on long voyages at sea. Many fleets have to travel far into the ocean to find schools of fish before bringing the catch back to port and sending it to processing plants. For tuna, much of the supply comes from the vast waters of the Pacific Ocean. This is one of the largest tuna fishing areas in the world. However, over many years, regulations to protect fish stocks have become increasingly strict. Some fishing zones have been restricted to allow fish populations time to recover. When production falls while demand remains steady, the price of canned fish tends to rise over time. Canned fish is still very popular, but its journey from the ocean to the supermarket shelf is becoming more complicated than before. 3. Dairy products. Dairy products have always taken up a large part of the grocery basket for many families. Fresh milk, cheese, and yogurt appear from breakfast to snacks throughout the day. But in the past few years, many shoppers have started to notice that the prices of this food group are changing quite clearly. Dairy farming is an industry with high operating costs and depends on many factors at the same time. Farms must maintain a stable feed supply for their herds, barn systems, milking machinery, and transportation of products to processing plants. After that, milk must be refrigerated, processed, and packaged before reaching supermarkets. So when production costs increase at any stage in this chain, dairy product prices usually react quite quickly. This is especially clear in major dairy-producing states such as Wisconsin, where thousands of farms supply milk to the American market. Dairy products are very difficult to store for long without a continuous refrigeration system. From farms to transport trucks to supermarket shelves, the cold chain must operate reliably to maintain product quality. Because of this, any change in production or transportation costs can quickly affect the prices of milk, cheese, and yogurt on store shelves. 2. Chocolate/cocoa. Chocolate is one of the most popular snacks in the world. From small chocolate bars in supermarkets to candies and desserts, cocoa appears in many familiar products in everyday life. But what many people do not notice is that most of the global cocoa supply comes from a relatively small region in West Africa. Countries such as Ivory Coast and Ghana currently supply more than half of the world's cocoa production. When production in this region faces problems, the global chocolate market can react quite quickly. In the past few years, cocoa production has declined due to extreme weather, crop diseases, and rising agricultural costs. When supply falls, cocoa prices in international markets also rise, and chocolate manufacturers begin to adjust their costs. In addition to cocoa, chocolate also requires many other ingredients such as sugar and milk. When the prices of these ingredients increase, the cost of producing chocolate also rises. Another important factor is transportation. Cocoa beans usually have to be shipped by sea from West Africa to processing plants in Europe or North America before becoming chocolate sold in supermarkets. This makes the product quite sensitive to changes in global shipping. If fuel costs rise or shipping routes are disrupted, chocolate prices can increase quite quickly. 1. Wheat and grain products. Wheat is one of the most important foundations of the global food system. From bread, pasta, to breakfast cereal, many familiar foods begin with this grain. So when the wheat market fluctuates, its impact often spreads to many products in supermarkets. Global wheat supply is concentrated in several major producing regions. Countries such as Russia and Ukraine are important wheat exporters, especially for many international markets. When tensions or export disruptions occur in these areas, global wheat prices usually react very quickly. Wheat production also depends heavily on fertilizer, especially nitrogen fertilizer. This type of fertilizer is produced from natural gas, so production costs can change significantly when energy markets fluctuate. When fertilizer prices rise, the cost of growing wheat for farmers also increases. In a small bakery in Kansas City, a 66-year-old baker said flour has always been the most basic ingredient in his shop. But in the past few years, flour prices have changed many times, forcing him to adjust how he orders and manages ingredients. Wheat appears in a wide range of familiar products in everyday life. So when the supply of this grain changes, its impact does not stop at farms or processing plants. It can spread across most food shelves in supermarkets. The foods on this list are all very familiar. But behind each item is an entire system of production and transportation stretching across the world. When one link changes, prices on supermarket shelves change as well. And sometimes, we only realize it when standing in front of a familiar aisle and seeing that things are no longer the same as before. If you found this video helpful, please press like and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the latest analysis about food, the economy, and the changes happening in everyday life.